Tonight on News 5 Live, A third case of COVID-19 leads to a countrywide state of emergency beginning April 1st. The person returned to Belize on March 20th and resides in the city. The national shutdown is for 30 days. The Prime Minister also announced that Belizeans who qualify for aid will begin getting disbursements this week. The Belize City man had limited contact, while the mother and daughter in San Pedro are recovering. Attorney Arthur Saldivar is arrested and charged with spreading false news. The San Pedro Tour Operators Association partners up with the business community to sanitize areas around San Pedro town. And we speak with Belizean students who returned home and are in self-isolation. Details of these stories and more coming up in tonight's newscast.
¿Qué mejor que textos ilimitados con tu plan postpago? ¿Qué tal llamadas nacionales ilimitadas 24/7? No hay mejor que eso, ¿verdad? En realidad, sí, porque
Good evening. Welcome to News 5 Live from Monday, March 30th. I am Marlene Cuellar. Prime Minister Dean Barrow spoke to the nation today in a pre-recorded statement on the virus that's turning life upside down. First, there is a third confirmed case of COVID-19. The person is from Belize City. He traveled from New York on March 20th and is now in isolation. And now that there is a first case in the most densely populated area of the mainland, there are more restrictive measures. A nationwide state of emergency is to take effect on Wednesday, April 1st. Certain areas of the country have been placed under state of emergency over the years, but a countrywide shutdown has not been imposed since 1981 at the time of the Heads of Agreement. That is 39 years ago, so many will not recall what it was like then. And now the circumstances are much different. Here's News 5's Isani Cayetano with this report.
Belize is tonight preparing for an imminent shutdown, hard on the heels of a third coronavirus diagnosis. On Sunday night, the Director of Health Services announced that another individual had tested positive for COVID-19. That case involves a resident of Belize City who recently returned from New York, the focal point of the outbreak in the United States. This afternoon, Prime Minister Dean Barrow addressed the nation in a recorded statement.
Yesterday, a Belizean that had returned from New York on March 20th tested positive for the novel coronavirus. That person claims to have been in self-isolation since his arrival back in Belize and was able to show health workers the contained and separate lower flat of the building in which his claimed isolation took place. The individual, though testing positive, is exhibiting only mild symptoms and is not currently in need of hospitalization. Nevertheless, he is living in Belize City, home to the largest population concentration in our country.
Dr. Marvin Manzanero has been leading the charge against COVID-19. Along with a medical team, several tests were recently conducted. Of that batch comes a third confirmed case.
9 samples were screened today. One of those samples has turned out to be positive for COVID-19. That sample is from a male person who has a travel history to the US, who arrived in country on March 20th. The patient has been asymptomatic for the most part, but developed mild signs and symptoms on March 25th. The patient was swabbed on March 27th, and today the screening and confirmatory tests have confirmed that he is positive for COVID-19. That patient remains in self-isolation, and the Ministry of Health surveillance team has been activated and alerted to start conducting their mapping exercise.
That activity will now seek to virtually retrace the patient's footsteps in order to determine those who may have come into contact with him since his arrival at the Philip Goldson International Airport 10 days ago.
For the National Oversight Committee and for the Cabinet of Belize, this is very significant. Clearly, the crowds in the old capital make us more susceptible to widespread transmission. Thus, a comprehensive tracing of the afflicted individuals' possible contacts and a wider mapping exercise are both being done by the Ministry of Health team. In this connection, both the evidence from other countries and the advice from our own experts agree on one thing: the best way to at least slow and hopefully stop the spread of the virus is by strictly enforcing the physical distancing, self-isolation, quarantining, and other such rules.
The latest development in respect of government's response to COVID-19 has precipitated swift and decisive action. In the days ahead, the entire country will come under a state of emergency as the National Oversight Committee attempts to stem the potential spread of this contagion citywide.
Even though we have already imposed a state of emergency for Ambergris Caye and passed 2 statutory instruments imposing penalties, including jail time, for those that do not comply with the law, too many Belizeans are not taking the measures seriously enough. In all the circumstances, we consider it our duty now to do even more to prevent any chance of Belize City becoming an epicenter of COVID-19. Indeed, to try to protect our entire country from the novel coronavirus.
Once again, as with San Pedro last week, Sir Colville Young will be called upon to sign into effect a legal declaration allowing government assumption of extraordinary powers to include, among other things, a restriction on the movement of citizens.
Accordingly, I will be advising His Excellency the Governor-General to declare a nationwide state of emergency for the country of Belize. This will go into effect at midnight on Wednesday, April 1st, and will include a curfew from 8 p.m. to 5 a.m. every day. The state of emergency is to last for 30 days in the first instance. For its duration, people will be advised to shelter in place even during daylight hours and only to come out as absolutely necessary for purposes of procuring supplies and doing such business and activities as are exigently required.
The powers that be, according to PM Barrow, have been working out the details of such a drastic measure, preparing a contingency. That time is nigh upon us.
Our National Task Force and our caucus of CEOs have been planning for this eventuality for some time now. Nevertheless, and as we had promised, we are giving a couple of days' notice for two reasons. Our people must have a chance to prepare for the new normal, and our officials must have a little more time to ensure that all systems are in place to guarantee the absolute availability of foodstuff and other critical supplies.
Reporting for News 5, I am Isani Cayetano.
As of Wednesday night, the restriction of free movement of citizens across the country will come into full effect as part of the state of emergency. Only persons who are deemed essential service workers, including law enforcement officers and health professionals, will be allowed to go about their respective duties outside of the imposed curfew. While that is one aspect of the nationwide shutdown, the issue of food security also remains at the forefront of the ongoing crisis. All assurances are being given that there is enough local produce to satisfy the demands of consumers during this time. Likewise, businesses, including banks, supermarkets, and pharmacies, will remain open.
The list of essential services and essential service workers is being finalized, and their operational logistics are being fine-tuned. Tomorrow, we will be holding a press conference for only the media at the Leng Building at 10 a.m. There, we will go into all the details, medical, logistical, and organizational, about the state of emergency. We will, of course, answer all questions from the media. I close by expanding on two things. First, I want to repeat what I said in last week's address to the nation. This country is self-sufficient in basic staples, and we can feed ourselves for the long haul. The continuity of essential services and the more than ample availability of supplies are both guaranteed, and there is no need to panic. Supermarkets, grocery stores, banks and credit unions will all remain open, and every arrangement is being made for local producers to proceed uninterrupted with the provision of meat, chicken, eggs, rice, beans, grains, vegetables, and so on. Cargo will also continue to come into our country, and essential imports are also secure.
Are there sufficient medical equipment and supplies to take us through this period of national shutdown amid the COVID-19 crisis? According to Barrow, there is enough to last the country for a 6-month period. As far as financial aid in the form of loans from the Inter-American Development Bank, the Prime Minister admits that help is a little slow to come, since the IDB and other international financial institutions are also busy rendering assistance to other countries that are also battling COVID-19.
The second point I must make is this. Our local health team and the Ministry of Health are so plentifully resourced that we could theoretically reach the point of equipment oversupply. I hasten to add, though, that there can never really be too much. I'm just trying to underline the fact that we are completely prepared for the battle on the health front. So, the Ministry of Health costed the requirements for a 6-month battle against COVID-19 at around $12 to $15 million, Belize dollars. We already have in hand close to $20 million, and $13 million more is arriving from the IDB in a matter of weeks. Therein, though, lies the beginnings of a possible problem. All the international financial institutions, perhaps understandably, are laser focused on the health front of this fight against COVID-19. As critical as that is, though, what I keep telling our international partners is that it is equally important for us to feed and clothe our people.
To tide Belizeans over while funding from the international financial institutions is made available, government will be drawing down on monies that have been earmarked from its majority-owned utility companies as well as the Social Security Board. Plans are also in place to bolster existing initiatives such as the Boost and food pantry programs.
For us to take care of those now out of work and livelihood, unable to take care of themselves and their families. Government, as you know, is already borrowing $75 million from the central bank, but this is a drop in the bucket. It is my solemn promise to you, however, that we will get more. I am in no doubt that we will end up at least doubling that $75 million. So there will be add-ons to the disbursement of money to our unemployed, which disbursements start this week, and will also initially utilize the contributions made by BEL, PWSL, and SSB. The additional funding that we will procure will augment the national ongoing Boost initiative that also already puts cash in the hands of our people. And we will expand countrywide, including to the rural areas, the Ministry of Human Development's all-important food assistance programs. Belizeans, I say again that you are not alone. Together, we will overcome. And I swear by that Almighty God, whom I ask now to bless us all, that government, our national partnership, and I personally will do everything to bring Belize as whole as possible out of this national and international nightmare.
The 38-year-old Belizean male who contracted COVID-19 before traveling to Belize from New York City remains in self-isolation tonight. Patient 3 is in Belize City, the economic and political hub of the nation. So the Barrow administration is enforcing quarantine measures to prevent the spread of the disease. Health experts say that patient 3 started to show minor signs and symptoms on March 25th. He sought medical attention 2 days after, and on March 29th, it was confirmed that he was carrying the infectious virus. Director of Health Services Dr. Marvin Manzanero, during today's Ask the Expert session, pointed out that patient 3 had little contact with other individuals. Dr. Manzanero says that the surveillance team of the Ministry of Health has started a mapping exercise of this patient and any potential contacts.
The case is of a male who has a travel history to New York. He was there for 2 weeks and arrived in country on March 20th. The male did not have any sign or symptom. He was informed upon arrival by health staff to self-isolate, and whenever he became symptomatic, to be in touch with the healthcare provider. He subsequently, 5 days later, started having flu-like symptoms and he was in touch with the healthcare provider, swabbed on March 27th, and the diagnosis, screening test and confirmatory test came up positive on yesterday. He is doing overall good. He doesn't really have any sign or symptom. He's not under any specific treatment regimen. As you know, there is no real treatment for COVID-19, but he has not warranted any specific treatment from our end. This third case is self-isolated. We have done our initial mapping in Belize City, and we don't seem to have any immediate family member or close contact that would have been unduly exposed, if you will. Of course, the mapping exercise now looks at other layers. We are looking at other 2 persons that may have traveled with him or were sharing some common address in New York, but that's part of the mapping exercise that's ongoing.
The Ministry of Health is acquiring more equipment to be used to fight the disease. Dr. Manzanero says that further testing will be carried out to detect potential cases. According to the Director of Health Services, health officials have not been able to ascertain community transmission since all 3 cases are linked to imported cases.
We got a further 1,000 testing kits arriving on Friday, and on Friday we had decided with the Ministry of Health team to start to scale up testing in search of further cases. As you will note, this is a 3rd case, but they're all linked to imported cases, so we have not been able to ascertain community transmission up until now. What we decided on Friday was also that we were going to be doing testing for any healthcare worker that was ill, do random sampling of any influenza-like illness across the country, and we did some of those yesterday, and swabbing any frontline person who may have been in contact with tourists, people at the airport, even they have no signs or symptoms. And that's random checks that we are going to start to do throughout this week. Again, we have been doing that. Some of the people we swabbed yesterday were tour guides. Doesn't mean they're having signs or symptoms. We're just trying to scale up the response in that regard. We still intend to increase that testing situation. Hopefully we can start running out 10 tests per week this week as we try to map out where our situation is. Again, to reiterate that there is no ongoing documented community transmission that we have been able to identify.
There are more details tonight on the $10 million donation granted by Lord Michael Ashcroft to the government to assist in the combat against COVID-19. The donation has been deposited with the Belize Bank in the name of the Belize COVID-19 Response Fund and is designated for the health and economic sectors. The Ministry of Health has benefited from a portion of the donation to be used for the procurement of protective equipment, essential medical items, medical equipment, accommodations, and financial support for frontline health workers. The money will also be used by NGOs and charitable organizations for the distribution of food and medical supplies to needy persons who lost their jobs. $1 million is being set aside for a sub-fund to support micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises. A committee is administering the fund, and it includes Lyndon Giuseppe, Executive Chairman of the Belize Bank, Dr. Yahalia Mesjen, a non-executive director of the bank, Michael Koyi of the bank, and Lord Ashcroft. In a release from the Belize Bank, Lord Ashcroft calls on business leaders to contribute to the fund, recognizing the novel coronavirus does not discriminate, and it is essential that Belize's health sector is ready for the battle ahead, and that those who have lost their jobs are able to find food for themselves and their families in this difficult time. It is also imperative that the small businesses in Belize are supported during this unprecedented challenge so that the economy can bounce back once the country is on the way to recovery. Coming up, San Pedranos take matters in their hands to sanitize the island.
Cooking is now fun.
The COVID-19 pandemic is the cause of worldwide instability. Huge chunks of economies are shutting down, businesses are closing, and the unemployment figures continue to rise. It is estimated that as many as 20,000 persons have already been left jobless in Belize. The local bus industry is taking a hit, already operating in a deficit. The Belize Bus Association wrote to Minister of Transport Edmund Castro, asking the government for assistance and assurance to keep the industry up and running. The letter reads, quote, "We desperately need your intervention in this situation as bus companies are operating at a loss. Please note with the rescheduling of the runs, it's still not feasible to cover the cost of daily expenses to operate these buses, especially for fuel and to pay employees," unquote. Secretary for the association, Ewert Mesjen, told News 5 that if the bus operators do not receive relief or assistance, they would not have any other choice but to cease operations.
For the last couple of days, our president has been dialoguing and has been trying to see what sort of package he could get for us as bus operators, because like everybody else, that every other industry that's been hit with what's taking place, we are taking a beating, and we want to keep the buses on the roads as long as possible can. But right now, for all operators, there's no operator out that is running right now who is actually making any money. Everybody is operating at a loss. Before long, we'll compile all the information we both gathered and get it on one paper to try and get into the department. The minister has promised us, based on the letter that was sent out to the different departments, that tomorrow he would have taken our plea to cabinet. So that is why for right now we're in a bit of a rush to try and get this paper together with the financial problems that we are facing, so that maybe by week's end we could start getting some sort of relief to keep these buses on the road as long as possible, and as long as the government says we can stay on the road, because if things turn for the worse, we won't be able to stay out there because we won't endanger the lives of our employees.
Now, public transportation is necessary for the movement of people who go to work or shop. Ewert Mesjen says that one of the requests being made by the Belize Bus Association is for the government to subsidize fuel in order for the bus operations to meet their operational costs.
We are asking also them that if we get the fuel, we can maybe stay on the road for as long as we get the fuel, and a part of what we need to pay salaries, because that is what is killing us. 2/3 of what you make goes into fuel. It takes between $500 or a little bit more to operate a bus per day. That's without you making $1 a night. This is something I've said before. Mm-hmm. So we are operating far below that $500 a day right now.
How long would you say that buses can last on the road without any help from the government?
I'd put it at maybe another 5 or 6 days the most.
With a confirmed case in Belize City, would it not be better if no buses are running, no people are moving between districts to districts?
I'll give you my opinion, and I'm sure that this is the opinion of a lot of our people too. But for my opinion, I'd say for us to close it down, because we move a lot of people, and the way the testings are going, I don't think we're getting enough people tested to find out what is happening, and we don't know who this person is that's positive in the Belize City or in the Belize district. We don't know how much people he has been in contact with, and if these people travel on the buses.
Meanwhile, in San Pedro town, the business community has partnered with the San Pedro Tour Operators Association to sanitize public areas. With the approval and supervision of the Ministry of Health, water mixed with Clorox is being used to wash certain spots around the town. The initiative began today, and Chairman of the association, Roberto Canol, says that the overall objective is to prevent the spread of the novel coronavirus.
we decided that we were going to do a mix of 90% water, 10% bleach, and that would help in sanitizing the public areas.
Okay, and this started today?
Yes, we did start today. We ventured out to start the thing at like around 10:30. Once the stores were closed, then we went out and did it today. It took us about 3 hours to do the whole town, which was a little bit less than what we expected, but it worked out pretty good. It's all being donated to us. The outreach of the community has been very supportive to this cause, and they have been calling us, trying to see how they can help. And right now we have to spray for one day. We consumed a total of 500 gallons of water, and we mix that with bleach at 10%. It's 50 gallons of bleach that is required for every day that we will be going out and doing this spraying. So yes, the community has been very supportive to that and coming on board and donating the bleach.
A number of Belizean students who were studying overseas have returned home and are in self-isolation due to the coronavirus. There is a 14-day incubation period for the virus, so during that time, there should not be contact with other persons. During this time, public health officers also monitor to determine if persons develop symptoms linked to COVID-19. Today, we reached out to several of these students who recently traveled from countries with confirmed cases of the virus. Far worse than social distancing, they say that 2 weeks with no contact time with relatives and friends is a mental drain. For Brighton Codd, who is studying in Canada on a sports scholarship, his isolation period ends later this week. Luckily for Mia Miles, who is studying at Maastricht University in the Netherlands, her isolation period ended on Sunday. They shared their experience with News 5.
Before I even reached Belize, I put myself in a self-isolation over in the Netherlands because, as you know, the Netherlands cases have been increasing over time. And right now they have one of the countries with the higher rates for the coronavirus. So I put myself in isolation there as a student, and that was hard because I had peers, like my friends, they were going out. They weren't really paying much attention to it. And when the things increased, I left the Netherlands and came to Belize. Being alone in a room for a little while, it does play its tolls on you. But at the end of the day, I realized that what I was doing and putting myself in isolation was greater than even if I got bored or whatever, it was more than that. By putting myself in isolation, I knew I was protecting my family, my friends, and overall the country and citizens here.
I think after my second day, I started having some anxiety experiences, and I actually had to get a physician to come and see me because, you start to think that you have all these symptoms, etc. And then I had my oxygen intake taken, etc., and it was at 99%. So anxiety is definitely one thing that builds up in self-isolation, especially being away from your family. I mean, the only time I get to see my parents is in the afternoon time when they drop lunch at the door, and it's from a distance. So I think that in itself is a mental strain that definitely builds up in self-isolation or self-quarantine.
Brighton Codd returned home from Canada on March 17th. At the time, that country had 17 confirmed cases of COVID-19, and schools were closing as a form of containment. On arrival, however, Codd says he had concerns on the screening process he observed at the Philip Goulson International Airport and the risky behavior of persons not respecting preventative protocols put in place.
On the 15th of March, we got summoned to state of emergency response, which made them close immediately for the remainder of the semester. And we had to be out of going in 2 days. And so I immediately had to book flights. And at that point in time, our province had probably 3 presumptive cases. Nothing was confirmed as yet. And then I flew into Toronto, which already had about 17 cases. So that was probably the risk in my travels. Then there was a straight flight from Toronto to Belize. I think I was a bit appalled and I think dismayed at the way things were being done at the PGIA, simply because I felt that there would have been more stringent precautionary measures being implemented at the airport, as well as more directives being reiterated upon the arrival of students and anyone who was coming from outside of Belize. So when we got off the plane, we were just stopped by an immigration officer, I believe, who took our customs and immigration form and asked where we were coming from and if we were students. That's the extent of the screening process, I'd say. We did not get tested for any kind of symptoms. We did not get any kind of directive as to what measures we should take in terms of self-isolation. I knew this because the government back in Canada had already issued self-isolation protocols to students. And so that's the reason why when I came home, I knew that it would be my responsibility to stay away from community to isolate for another 14 days. I could see that the social distancing measures were not being implemented at the airport because we had a lot of students who were in clusters in the immigration line. There was not the 3 feet protocol being implemented. And even when we were standing outside waiting for parents to come and get us, I saw students hugging their parents. I said, but that is not social distancing. We're making direct contact with people. And so I thought that the information could have been disseminated a bit more at port of entry.
Isolation comes with huge challenges, since it is an abrupt departure from normal life to no contact with family members and friends. Successful self-isolation is a battle more of the mind than a physical one in a period of 14 days that feels more like a lifetime. While there is no guidebook, there are many activities that a self-isolated person can do to pass the time and ward off the anxiety and boredom. The students shared how they were able to cope and shared some tips on how to survive.
I tried to minimize the amount of media, exposure to media and what's being covered worldwide, because it really just builds that anxiety. So I kind of minimized the amount of news articles I read pertaining to the COVID-19 outbreak. I started to do stuff like coloring, doing puzzles. I have assignments as well that I need to complete for the semester, but I messaged my professors and I told them I'm not in the mental state right now to continue with my assignments. Soon, after I'm finished with my quarantine, then I will get back to my assignments. So that's just how much it throws you off from the normal state of doing things.
I would advise you to take the proper precautionary steps before traveling. Make sure you wear a mask or anything that you have available to you, because I know that there's a shortage right now for masks. Cover your face. Try to remain 6 feet away when you're traveling. This is when you're traveling. Try to keep a distance from other individuals while coming through. Constantly wash your hands. The sanitizers with the alcohol content above, I think, 65, that's said to help. And then when you reach home, do your part, do your role. Don't hug and kiss your family. Just wait and know that by waiting, you are protecting someone. You are potentially saving someone's life by just waiting and doing your job and making sure that you are keeping yourself and others safe.
After the break, a well-known attorney is picked up and charged for spreading fake information. Attorney Arthur Saldivar is the second person to be charged for spreading false information in relation to COVID-19. The charge comes after Saldivar made a Facebook post on Saturday claiming that a group of persons coming from Los Angeles, California, including someone who isn't a national, were being facilitated entry into Belize through the northern border. Saldivar also made mention that the group was being assisted by a UDP politician. He was subsequently arrested and charged on Saturday night. On Sunday, police stated that as a result of Saldivar's post, other social media users started to share the statement, which, quote, tended to create a public alarm, unquote. On Sunday night, Saldivar said online that some officers had jumped his fence when they went to arrest him at his house and that the incident has caused harm to his children. The video has, however, been removed. Today, ACP Joseph Maivet shared a few details on the incident and answered questions from the press about that charge.
On Saturday, the police, whilst browsing, came upon a Facebook post in the name of an account belonging to Arthur Saldivar. As a result, an investigation was conducted where he was detained and later arrested and charged for the offense of spreading false news. He was shortly thereafter granted bail to appear in court. The issue, which I will not go into detail, was regarding persons being allowed into the country from the northern border, including Belizeans and non-Belizeans.
Sir, so have police been able to completely disprove his post?
Yes, an investigation was done, and hence the reason why he was detained.
Sir, so is it that the police determines that this is spreading panic, or is it that you receive reports from the public to say this is creating panic?
What happened is that as a result of that post, there may have been several other posts in response to what was said, hence the reason that the panic was created by others based on that first post.
How do you determine which post really is creating panic? Because there are several persons, prominent persons, you know, ordinary man and woman posting things on Facebook, making certain claims. Now, how do you go about determining this is the one that we're going to hold responsible or to charge?
Well, it is usually the origin of those posts, the person who originally posts those information, and based on the reaction that is seen, an investigation is conducted.
Now, are you looking at charging anyone else? I would imagine that there are several posts, videos up on Facebook right now. Are you reviewing those others?
Yes, we are. As you are aware also that the first person was charged last Thursday, I believe it was, from San Jose Orange Walk. And so there are several others being sought by police in relation to these type of investigations.
How does police go about validating or even invalidating these posts? Do you guys contact the relevant authorities? How does that work?
At this point in time, police are posted across the country. There is police officers at the northern border where these activities are alleged to be happening. Police have stepped up their patrolling efforts and their interaction with certain communities. So then an arrest is not immediately made. An investigation is done before an arrest is made.
You guys have persons sitting behind a desk scrolling through social media. What does that look like?
No, the police does have an information technology unit, and as investigators from the Crime Investigation Branch and other operational branches, whenever there is a complaint made, that would be a part of any investigation in relation to crimes committed.
Police say that they have arrested a group of men for failing to comply with the Social Distancing Act in light of COVID-19. The arrest was made at a bar in the north, where the owner of the establishment was also slapped with a separate charge for refusing to close his liquor establishment. Assistant Commissioner of Police Joseph Maive tells us more.
On Saturday, sometime around 8 p.m., Corozal Police was on patrol in Libertad Village and also responding to a complaint where they visited a bar in Libertad Village, where upon arrival they observed several persons congregating together very closely and drinking. As a result, those persons were spoken to, and they were learned to be Isaiah Sedasi, 26 years, Jose Velasquez, 42 years, Jose Chan, 18 years, Eugene Fuentes, 21 years, Jeremy Martinez, 39 years, and a 17-year-old minor, who were all detained, along with the bar owner, one Jose Quintanilla, who is 50 years old. Those persons, with the exception of Jose Quintanilla, was charged for failing to comply with social distancing, whilst Quintanilla was charged for refusing to close liquor establishment when required to do so by the Act.
Explain to us the nature of the enforcement and why it was that these persons were violating the law, and explain for the people at home, sir, what they need to do to ensure that they aren't arrested under this particular act.
Well, there have been several releases from the committee at this point in time, which has been made public, where they were urging the social distancing of persons need to be at least 3 feet apart, as well as other issues in relation to that being gatherings, right? So hence the reason we are conducting those investigations, and there have been a number of information coming to the police in relation to these issues where the police are responding to, and charges are being instituted against those persons.
Sir, are police finding that you have a lot of citizens not respecting the social distancing call?
There are some, but in many instances, yes, indeed, people are respecting the social distancing.
Police are coming down hard on persons who do not observe quarantine measures in place. Over the weekend, 3 persons were charged for public drinking in the South. Police say that the men were drinking together outside of a business in Red Bank. The men, according to police, were also not adhering to social distancing regulations, so they were each hit with that second charge.
On Saturday, sometime around 8 p.m., whilst police were on patrol in Red Bank Village, they came across 3 persons outside a Chinese establishment who were drinking. Those persons were learned to be Rene Param, 28 years, Oscar Param, 32 years, and Juan Manchame, 42 years, all Guatemalan nationals. They were advised of the offense committed, and they were taken into custody, where they have since been arrested and charged for public drinking, as well as failing to abide by the regulations in relation to social distancing.
And in a separate case, but related to the issue of public drinking, we turn to an incident that allegedly involves a senior police officer. A video was shared over the weekend on Facebook in which the voice of Deputy Commissioner of Police Edward Broster was heard to be saying that he was following up a report of police officers engaged in public drinking in Belize City. In the video, we repeat, only Broster's voice is heard, who was traveling in a mobile. When Broster arrived on 3rd Street, he called out the name Dawson, and he sounded as if he was surprised to have encountered that officer engaged in public drinking. Now, reports allege that based on the vehicle and voice heard in the video, that the cop is Assistant Commissioner of Police Alden Dawson, who's the regional commander of the Eastern Division in Belize City. In the video, you will hear the individual denying drinking in public. So why is it a big issue? Well, there should be no public drinking, and the cops have been holding the public to task. The question the media asks is whether the police will hold one of their own, especially if it is a high-ranking officer. Today, ACP Joseph Maivet was pressed about that video. First, we have the video with Broster's voice, followed by the comments of ACP Maivet.
So we got reports that officers are drinking on 3rd Street, so I am going to go and check out now and see which officer is drinking on 3rd Street, doing public drinking. That you, Dawson? We get report police they do public drinking here. I can't believe that you. Help me no public drinking. Help me no public drinking.
Sir, on another topic, there is a video of supposedly Deputy Commissioner Brasta on the move to try to determine which police officer was engaging in public drinking. And according to the video, his reaction, he suggested Mr. Dawson, a very senior police officer, will there be criminal charges or will there be disciplinary charges in relation to what the video seems to indicate?
I have not seen the video, so I will not comment on what I haven't seen. But there are several Dawsons within the Belize Police Department.
Okay.
That is as far as I will go in relation to that.
On Saturday morning around 8 o'clock, police conducted a search at a residence in San Ignacio where they found unlicensed ammunition. 3 persons who were at the residence at the time were arrested and charged.
San Ignacio police conducted a search at the home of one Neville Garbat in San Ignacio, where whilst conducting the search, they discovered one 9mm magazine and one .223 round of ammunition. As a result, at the time, Garbat was accompanied by Frederick Hernandez, Crispin Garbat, and they have all since been arrested and charged.
What was the offense, sir?
Possession of unlicensed ammunition.
When we come back, new quarantine measures will add up to a tidy sum on Belizeans returning home.
Whether you're home or just home for the moment, the beauty that is Belize, every sun-kissed wave, every treasure discovered far beneath the surface, every
Tonight, Belize has 3 confirmed cases of COVID-19. The first was confirmed on Sunday, March 22nd. The patient is a 38-year-old Belizean female who is currently in self-isolation in San Pedro town. She arrived in Belize on Thursday, March 19th from Los Angeles. The patient's mother was later infected, prompting the government to extend San Pedro's state of emergency for 30 days. No new cases have emerged from San Pedro as yet, and according to the Director of Health Services, Dr. Marvin Manzanero, both patients are recovering.
The other 2 cases are doing very well. Actually, the mom seems to be doing better than the index case in the sense of having no sign or symptom. And the other contacts, immediate contacts of these first 2 cases are also asymptomatic.
There were a number of new quarantine measures put in place over the weekend. During today's Ask the Expert segment, Dr. Marvin Manzanero was joined by John Bowden. He's the principal public health inspector, and according to Bowden, any Belizean entering the country will be quarantined for 21 days at different facilities. And for those 21 days, a cost of $110 per day for accommodation and 3 meals will be accumulating.
What we are starting to do now is to look at the training for non-health individuals, because we're at the point now whereby we are enforcing that anybody coming into the country will have to go into immediate quarantine. And as such, we need to ensure that the facilities are up to scale in terms of the coordination for the use of these facilities. It's to reassure the community that we do have a place for these individuals to be taken once they come into the country. In fact, we've had for a time now where we've said that the border is closed only to Belizeans, and as such, we have people who are migrating from the U.S. and they are reaching our borders and they're Belizeans, and so we need to accommodate them. But we still need to look at the potential risks that exist with these individuals and ensure that we have a mechanism to quarantine them and to monitor them over the duration. We know that in most cases we've been looking at the 14-day period, but we have extended this now based on research that we now need to extend this to 21 days.
Coming up after the break, police continue to investigate a fatal traffic accident down south. Last Friday made 1 week since Sean D. Emmanuel was knocked down and killed on the Melinda Road in Stan Creek. The Hope Creek resident was riding his bike heading to work when he was hit by a freight liner. Police have said that the driver, Darren Castillo, was served with a notice of intended prosecution. Today we asked ACP Joseph Maivet for an update on the investigation into the fatal crash, considering that there are allegations and questions about who may have been driving the truck that day.
He was served with a notice of intended prosecution.
How's the investigation going into that, sir?
Well, it's still ongoing. He was originally detained and a statement was recorded from him, and he was later served with a notice of intended prosecution and released pending further investigation. The file will be compiled and then it will be sent to the Director of Public Prosecution for her to give her direction.
Sir, did police receive a report? Because when I went down there, I received multiple reports that the person who's claiming that he was driving the truck, that he wasn't the driver, that it may have been a very close relative. Are you looking at that angle to determine who was really driving that Freightliner?
Well, we haven't had that information. As far as we know, the driver was found on the scene when the police arrived, but we didn't get that information, but certainly it's something that we will follow.
The COVID-19 pandemic is having an impact in every imaginable sector. As you know, there is a backlog in cases to be heard and decisions to be delivered at the Supreme Court. But the court now has to safeguard the health and safety of judicial officers, officers of the court, staff members, and the general public, while maintaining a functional judicial system. So civil and criminal matters are now being heard remotely to enable access to justice, and trials by jury have been suspended. The court is also ensuring that social distancing is implemented at the courthouse. The measures were finalized by the Chief Justice following a meeting with stakeholders, including the Bar Association.
Certain measures were discussed and agreed to further certain initiatives to limit the spread of the potential spread, I should say, of the virus, including measures such as social distancing. And so basically what the measures that we're taking are looking at are reducing person-to-person contact, reducing the amount of persons who will be in the precincts of the court at a particular time, and maximizing the use of technology and introducing new initiatives to where technology is concerned, so as to limit to further those objectives. Particularly in the criminal court, the Chief Justice had already issued a notice that trials with juries have been temporarily suspended. So any trial for which somebody is charged with an offense and it has to be tried by a jury, that is being suspended until further notice. Those that are being tried by judge alone are still continuing, and therefore if any person who is accused will still be able to attend their trial if it is before a judge. And similarly in the magistrate's court, because we discussed measures that were going to be taken as well, the trials with multiple defendants have been temporarily suspended as well, but those with single defendants or in certain cases one or two, those will still be disposed of as normal. But and it's important to also just state that both at civil and criminal side, urgent matters will still continue to be heard.
And that's the news. Don't forget that tonight's broadcast is available in both text and streaming video at channel5belize.com. You can also connect with us on our Facebook page at facebook.com/News5Live. I'm Marlene Cuellar. Thanks for joining us. And from all of us here at News 5, remember to wash your hands and keep your social distance. Good night.